everyone. Amina here with the Float Small Business Podcast, speaking with Sam Adams, former mayor of Portland, Oregon. And we're going to be talking about survival and resilience and how to stay strong when everything is crashing down around you. And I really think that we could all use a bit of encouragement right now. Thanks so much, Sam.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. And I couldn't think of a more important topic, especially for small businesses right now who, I really, want to support in every way I can. So thanks for having me.
I would love to just hear how you're doing. It's a crazy year. We're almost at the end of it. How are you? How are you holding up?
I'll be glad when 2020 ends, even though it's kind of a artificial construct. Lost my dad this year, and that was really tough. And we couldn't see him because he was in a care facility. So many people have had such a much worse year than I've had. So I feel very fortunate.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for your loss. I feel the same way, being in a fortunate position. I thankfully I haven't lost anyone close to me, and I haven't known anybody that has gotten debilitatingly sick. But as a small business platform, I've seen so many friends and colleagues and just members of the community suffering in innumerable ways. And
Right.
one of the things that I was really excited to talk to you about is just this idea of resilience. And
Mhm.
you've seen some things. You've been through some things personally,
Mhm.
professionally, and I know it's a complicated topic, so to just ask you, what are your thoughts on resilience seems like too big a question to ask, but I guess, how do you do it? How have you gotten past challenges and come out seemingly stronger on the other side?
Well, the short answer is I had a lot of good fortune and a lot of help. And um, folks along the way, I think, showed up in my life that, looking back, I'm so grateful for. I come from a difficult family background, hard scrabble, and smart, hardworking parents that did the best they could. But we went through some tough times, and for example, teacher at Sam Case Elementary in Newport, Oregon. Um, for some reason, sensed, because you don't cop to anything when you're in third grade, but sort of must have sensed something, because just a little bit of sort of extra attention made all the difference in the world to me.
Hmm.
And even though I didn't, disclose how bad things were, parents of good friends of mine, even at that age, you know, just were really great. But I failed a lot initially. I mean, I probably the, I wasn't resilient to begin with, and, fell apart in sort of different ways, even though you wouldn't necessarily know it by looking at me, even in third grade.
Hmm.
But other people were there to sort of witness that falling apart, or had a sense of it, and not the kind of person at a young age to want to talk about any of that, not raised to share or talk about any of that.
Mm.
But it was that sensitivity of the teacher and some of my friends' parents who, just said the kind word. If they asked me about it, fine, I'm fine.
Yeah.
So that was, I guess I got resilient from failing to be resilient initially. I knew from a pretty early age the benefits of government. Food stamps and subsidized housing helped us survive. But I also saw how government just made it harder for even smart, hardworking people that found themselves in a bad situation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a rambling answer to say that I am still learning how to be resilient. And I have been very lucky to have people along the way who reached out or made a connection to me
Yeah.
and helped me sort of get through some really difficult times.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine that there are a lot of people, especially right now, that might be putting on a brave face the way that maybe
Yeah.
you were in third grade. What do
Mm-hmm.
you have to say to maybe those business owners or families that
Mm.
are putting on that brave face about the power of community if you just ask for help? Like, I guess, do you wish you had asked for help when you were that age, or did people just take care of it because you were young?
My life has always benefited from asking for help, even if the answer was no,
Mm.
um, because they either couldn't because of their own sort of limitations or wouldn't because they weren't comfortable with it.
Mm.
And my biggest challenge has been not asking for help, you know, and where I've gotten through tough times, not asking for help, it's because other people noticed I needed help. So
Yeah.
I've tried to, pay that forward over the years and ask. Because if you're running a business, you've put yourself out there, and these are really excruciatingly tough times.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like community is such a big part of the answer here. I don't think there are any easy answers, but community and us coming together and commiserating and collaborating is, I think, going to be a huge tool, a huge resource for getting out of this and surviving it. It's my optimistic view on it anyway.
Yeah. A silver lining might be even really smart, great entrepreneurs and small business people in this environment are going to fail. And some will get by, but the ones that fail should not be viewed as, somehow inadequate.
Yep. Yep. I wholeheartedly agree. I also just coincidentally this past week have been having a lot of conversations about self-worth and about failure and about attaching one's self-worth to just one particular facet of their lives. And, when you have a success, when you reach a goal, that can feel great and that can reinforce that sense of self-worth. But then if you encounter a stumbling block or a speed bump and you perceive it as a failure, then that, if you attach a lot of your self-worth to that, it can bring you down really fast. And so I think it's maybe a little bit dangerous to associate too much of one's self-worth to the success or failure of anything, especially when it's largely outside of our control, like what most of 2020 has been.
Everything says we're not just going to snap back to where we were before the pandemic. So trying to figure out what's going to, some is going to snap back and what is not, and what trends have been accelerated by this. I think that's what I'm trying to do as I look, as a consultant myself and as still a political civic entrepreneur, still stirring the pot, trying to keep that in mind, being much more humble about what is it? What I don't know, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah. So that brings me, I keep wondering about the perception of our politicians, because in a pandemic, I mean, I've never lived through a pandemic before, but I understand sort of the scientific process. You learn a little bit, and then you learn a little bit more. And through that learning process about whatever it is you're studying, but in this case, a virus, you're going to have changing recommendations. you see the CDC, you see the WHO coming out with one recommendation, and then the next week they change it up. And the politicians are expected to keep up, and
Mhm.
the community is expected to trust the advice. But if the advice or the course, just like in a small business, if it's changing, so
Mhm.
we're saying here, okay, small businesses, be open to pivoting. But in the public sphere, if a politician flip-flops like that, even if
Mhm.
there's good cause for it, because it's just how the scientific process works,
Right.
can we really embrace that kind of thinking on the political level? Or is it just going to seem like we're indecisive, or that there's a weakness there?
Well, I hope it shakes things up, and out of this pandemic and the last 4 years, I hope government at all levels and the key partnership with the private sector, the public-private partnerships, is more interested and more passionate about evidence-based sort of decision making. And like you say, if you're going to be evidence-based, it means you're going to see the evidence change,
Sure.
either because of the kind of evidence that's available to us, better analysis. And, my approach has always been to, treat constituents like adults and, tell them what the confidence level is of what you're saying. One of the best things I feel like I did after being in local government for so many years, when I was in charge, I finally required that when there are estimates or predictions or forecasts that, in this case, the city government puts out, they also have to put out a confidence rating. Like, is this low, medium, high? Absolutely certain. Well, nothing ever was absolutely certain,
Sure.
only in hindsight. And I think that is a really useful way for all of us to think. And in these sort of polarizing political times, I hope we can get back to more evidence based. Evidence has its pluses and minuses as well. Experience is very important, but you put experience together and your goals along with evidence, and you actually think about the quality of the evidence that you're working from, and you let people know what our confidence level is. I have seen people react really well to that.
And that's, I think, also why I feel transparency is so important as well.
Yeah.
And just coming back to failure, maybe stepping up and admitting, hey, you know what, the evidence pointed to this, and so we made this recommendation, but the evidence has since shifted, and so we must
Right.
pivot. And maybe that's not fully admitting a failure, because it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a failure. It's going with the best information that we have in the moment. But I think that some people are reluctant to even go as far as to say, we have to pivot, and here's why. They just do it. Or even worse, they don't, for fear of looking like they're weak. And that causes maybe more problems.
I mean, if I've had to learn over a lifetime of successes and failures, and many of them very public, that it's not that I don't care what other people think. I do. And if you're in positions of responsibility, you need to care about what other people think, your employees, your constituents in business, customers, clients. But obviously that can go too far and have you not acting or acting in a way that's obsequious. And that's why I think what we were talking about earlier is important, is you share that transparency that you were talking about. You sort of share with folks what you're thinking and why, and it doesn't have to even be evidence-based. You're going to get feedback.
Mm-hmm.
But then I here, in Portland, Oregon, there's a lot of expectations about public process, and that's true in a lot of cities. And It can go overboard sometimes, but by and large, it makes better decisions.
Thank you so much, Sam, for sharing a little bit about yourself, your level of vulnerability. And I really feel like the the community coming together and being there for each other in a very real way is just so important. And the key on the real side, I think, is that vulnerability, is being able to say, hey, I can help, or hey, I need help, and coming together. So thank you so much, Sam.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.